Marine. It's December 23rd, and today I'm talking about something very important. And by the way, I know no one's tuning in yet, but you can ask me questions or make comments on this very important subject, and I'll answer them immediately. I can see all the comments as they come in. All right, so basically what I'm talking about today is that Indonesia is planning on banning kratom in 2022. And some people might not believe this. I've posted several articles over the past year about this issue, and I often get responses like, oh, that's not true. It's not happening. It can't happen. Well, here's the truth. The Indonesian government, specifically their National Narcotics Agency, the BNN, scheduled a kratom ban in 2019. And in fact, I think kratom is actually technically illegal in Indonesia, except the caveat is that they delayed the ban by 5 years to 2024 because they wanted to give the Indonesian farmers a chance to switch to other crops. So basically, so many Indonesians depend on kratom because it's such a huge cash crop that they didn't want to just make those people poverty-stricken overnight. Instead, what they're doing is letting those people plant other plants for now. And here's the bad news, by the way. So originally in 2019, they scheduled a 5-year waiting period for kratom farmers to transition to other crops, but it was actually accelerated to 2022. So yeah, they moved the ban up by 2 years, and that was a real slap in the face for the Indonesian kratom farmers because they were aggressively lobbying to get rid of the ban completely. Actually, they were trying to get rid of the ban completely, but then the BNN slapped them. The narcotics agency said, no, we're moving it up by 2 years. And by the way, as of a couple weeks ago, the BNN issued a statement saying that the ban is still happening. And yeah, right now it is, it's near the end of 2020. We're only just a year away from this ban. Literally on New Year's Day, 2022, kratom will be banned in Indonesia. They will no longer be allowed to export it at all. I believe it might already be banned for personal use as of now too, but that's kind of crazy because there's so much kratom growing in Indonesia, you can't really ban it, but I think it is technically banned. It's not allowed to be used, but it's still allowed to be exported for the sake of the farmers. So basically, 2022, there's a ban coming for kratom in Indonesia. Why is this a big deal? Well, 95% of the world's kratom comes from Indonesia. And not only that, about 100% of the kratom from all the kratom vendors comes from Indonesia. Almost no one gets kratom from anywhere else. So if Indonesia bans kratom, it would devastate the global kratom supply, basically. There are some alternatives, and I will be discussing them on this show. There is some hope. Well, first off, there's hope that the ban will be overturned before it happens. And by the way, for people tuning in, you could ask me questions or make comments. I'll answer them immediately. But anyways, so there's hope that this will be overturned. The American Kratom Association remains optimistic that they'll be able to overturn it. But here's another problem that's happening. So the American Kratom Association was supposed to meet with the with the BNN, the narcotics agency in Indonesia. They were supposed to go there and meet them months ago. But then the COVID happened, so they haven't been able to go there. Literally no one can really travel to Indonesia. And also the government itself is very busy with what's going on with COVID. So the government and the BNN, the agency that's trying to ban kratom in Indonesia, they're basically saying we have no time to do anything. And they're also honestly very busy with the coronavirus pandemic. So it's become very difficult for any lobbyists like the American Kratom Association or the kratom growers in Indonesia to meet with the narcotics agency and show them the truth. And by the way, getting to the root of the problem here, basically the FDA, Food and Drug Administration misinformation campaign, our United States FDA, they spread such misinformation about kratom, and that's also pretty much Big Pharma. So Big Pharma and the FDA, they spread so much misinformation about kratom that is dangerous and deadly, and that's why Indonesia is banning kratom. Literally, the BNN, the narcotics agency in Indonesia, they quote the FDA misinformation saying kratom is dangerous. They're saying kratom's like cocaine and heroin combined. They're saying it's deadly. And so that's the root of the problem. And the root of the problem could be easily overturned simply by showing the real kratom science. So basically, the real science shows kratom is safe. It shows that kratom has never killed anyone in history. There's actually been no scientifically proven kratom deaths in history. Not only that, kratom is saving tons of lives. This simple leaf right here. I got some actual kratom leaves right here. This leaf is saving millions of people pretty much. 15 million Americans use it at least. It might even be more now. And it's saving lives. It's never killed anyone. It's probably the safest supplement in the entire history of the world. Even caffeine kills people sometimes. There's been caffeine deaths. There's even been Tylenol deaths and ibuprofen deaths. Kratom has never killed anyone. But anyways, the FDA and Big Pharma are trying to say kratom is a deadly opioid. Basically what they did was said, kratom has opioid effects, therefore it's deadly, which is not true. First off, opioids are naturally in our body. We have like endorphins all throughout our body, which are like almost the same molecule as morphine. So opioids are a natural part of our body. Secondly, kratom is an atypical opioid. It doesn't cause any respiratory suppression, so no one could overdose on it like they do with heroin. Like heroin causes people's lungs to shut down, God forbid, and then they die. Kratom, on the other hand, doesn't cause that. There's no respiratory suppression. So the science, and there's been many scientific studies which prove that kratom is safe. And so all that needs to be done really is the kratom growers and the American Kratom Association and the kratom community needs to show the Indonesian government this science. But it's not so simple. The government of Indonesia, at least the BNN, and by the way, it's not unanimous. Like, there's other organizations in the government of Indonesia. I believe the Department of Agriculture wants kratom to be legal. It's just the narcotics agency wants it to be illegal. But anyways, the narcotics agency in Indonesia, they don't really want to listen so far as I could tell, or they would. You know, I mean, there's people sending them this info all the time, and they're not really listening. And honestly, it's kind of like the FDA in the United States. You know, just like, you know, the kratom community like told the FDA, hey, kratom is safe. It saves our lives. The FDA still hasn't listened to this day, even though the FDA has seen all the science which proves that kratom is safe, because Big Pharma like influences the FDA so strongly. In fact, the FDA gets almost all of its money from Big Pharma via approval of new drugs. So the FDA gets billions upon billions of dollars from Big Pharma, and that has caused corruption. I believe the same thing is going on in Indonesia with the narcotics agency. Pretty much, Big Pharma has, you know, a stranglehold on them. So this is the problem. And considering that it's not so optimistic that this kratom ban will be overturned in Indonesia. Remember, it's just 1 year from now. And also the scary thing is too, and I don't even talk about this in my articles, like, you know, they moved it up by 2 years already one time, and now it's like in 2022. What if they just move it up like by another 6 months, or they move it up to like a month from now? You know, they could really do anything they want. So it could go either way. They could either get rid of the ban, delay it, or move it up to immediately. It's possible. They got the authority apparently to just ban kratom unilaterally. And so, once again, there is hope that it could be overturned, but the fact that Big Pharma has its roots in the BNN, and then also the fact that the COVID's happening, making it very hard for people to negotiate with the BNN, this has all caused serious delays to like repealing this kratom ban, and now we're just 1 year away. And by the way, this has been going on for over a whole year. It started in early 2019. The kratom ban was declared in early 2019 in Indonesia. So we're talking it's been almost 2 years now, and there's been no indications that it's going to be overturned. It's only gotten worse, actually. Once again, they moved it up by 2 years from 2024 to 2022. So this is a serious issue. Now let me talk about what could happen if this does go through at the beginning of 2022. And also, I'm going to talk about what could happen, like what are the alternatives besides Indonesia? Because even if Indonesia bans kratom, not all hope is lost. All right, 1 second. I'm going to drink a little water. I've been talking a lot. All right, so what's going to happen if kratom is banned in Indonesia? By the way, people watching, question, comment, I'll answer you immediately. So if it's banned, basically 95% of the world's kratom supply will disappear. And once again, about 100% of the kratom that every kratom vendor is offering, all the big kratom vendors, they get 100% of their kratom from Indonesia. So what's going to happen? Well, the prices are going to skyrocket, and I believe the prices will skyrocket well before the ban happens. It could happen months before it happens. Once the ban looks imminent, you know, people will start raising their prices because it'll start getting, start being scary for the kratom suppliers. You know, they'll realize they got to raise their prices. And also there's going to be a huge rush on kratom. So people are going to be buying out all the kratom, causing supply shortages, causing the price to increase according to the law of supply and demand. So yeah, basically prices are going to start to rise even before the ban goes into effect on New Year's Day 2022. But once the ban happens, forget about it. It's going to be like hundreds of dollars per kilo. Like right now, kratom is like as low as $75 or $70 a kilo on AmazingBotanicals.net. But it could easily go to hundreds of dollars a kilo if kratom is banned in Indonesia. Like everywhere, it'll be hundreds of dollars a kilo. It could even go to like $1,000 a kilo or thousands of dollars per kilo in the head shops. So yeah, we could be talking about thousands of dollars per kilo for kratom, and at that point, kratom is like just about as expensive as heroin, if that happened, God forbid. And most of the people that are taking kratom will no longer be able to afford it. So this would be a travesty. And even then, even if someone had the $1,000 for a kilo and they wanted to spend $1,000 on a kilo, it might get to the point that there's not enough kratom to supply, even if they have the money. It could be a serious supply crisis. So this is a critical issue, and once again, it's only a year from now. And now I'm going to get into the hopeful things. It's not all dark. So kratom is obviously a tree. It grows. It's not confined to just Indonesia. Most of the world's kratom comes from Indonesia, but it grows in other places. There's a few other places where it natively grows where it is not yet banned. Papua New Guinea, which is to the east of Indonesia, in the South Pacific Ocean. Papua New Guinea could definitely be a good source of kratom supply. And there is big kratom forest growing there. It is legal there. The only thing is it's not been developed yet for a kratom supply. So basically, there might be a lot of forest, but there's no facilities, no people working on it really. I think a little bit of kratom comes from there. So basically, if kratom is banned in Indonesia, it might take some years before Papua New Guinea is providing enough kratom to offset a fraction of the losses from Indonesia's kratom. Other places include Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. So Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, I believe kratom is legal. I mean, it's a little gray area, but I believe it's legal. So Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, they could, become a kratom supplier. But once again, first off, kratom doesn't grow as much there. That's like to the north of Indonesia, so it's a little colder. Sometimes there's more hurricanes, especially. So there's a lot of hurricanes going into Vietnam, and kratom does not do good in hurricanes. So basically, the reason that kratom is basically only grown in Indonesia is because Indonesia is right on the equator, and due to the Coriolis force being nothing at the equator, there's no hurricanes in Indonesia. And due to that, so basically kratom needs two things to thrive. It needs year-round tropical heat and humidity, no cold fronts. I'm in South Florida, and even here, it's not good to grow kratom outside. Some people are trying, but their trees basically die or they wither up every year. They don't grow that good here because even if you get one cold front, it could kill a kratom tree. Kratom trees need temperatures above 60 to really do okay. And even they pretty much need 80 or 90 all the time, or 70, 80 or 90. That's what they need. So Indonesia has that year-round tropical heat and humidity, and also Indonesia has pretty much no hurricanes because it's right on the equator. So yeah, as you get further north into Vietnam, there's definitely a lot of hurricanes. So the kratom forests there are definitely not as abundant. There's much less kratom. There's no heat there really in South Vietnam, so it could grow good as far as there's no cold fronts, but then a hurricane might come along and wipe out the forest. So Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, they could be developed into a kratom growing region, but ultimately it would probably not produce anywhere near as much kratom as Indonesia. Another hope is Thailand. Thailand has less hurricanes. They still have some hurricanes, but Thailand definitely is an abundant kratom region. The only thing is Thailand cut down all their kratom forests, I believe, in the 1940s. So during World War II, the Thailand government took over the opium trade in Thailand. And they saw kratom as a threat because people were using kratom to get off opium. And, that was causing their profits to decline. It's just like what's happening today with Big Pharma. So back then, in 1940s in Thailand, Big Pharma was the opium trade. Same thing. And they said, kratom's causing our profit margins to decline. And so they banned kratom. And not only did they ban kratom, they cut down all the kratom forests. So Thailand might legalize kratom. There's been a lot of hope about that. But they have not legalized it yet, first off. People are still being arrested all the time in Thailand for having kratom. I've seen it in the news all the time. So Thailand, kratom is definitely illegal there still. There's hope that it will be legalized. It's unclear, even if it is legalized, if it will be legalized for exporting. Right now, it looks like it might just be legalized as medicinal kratom. You know how there's medical marijuana in some states? It'll be like that, pretty much, where, it could be offered to the residents who have a medical card sort of thing, but it can't just be shipped out in bulk to another country. So we'll see what happens in Thailand. It's not looking so good for a couple reasons. First off, there's no guarantee it'll be legalized there. Secondly, it will take decades to grow back the kratom forest once it is legal. So once again, to summarize, there's Papua New Guinea, Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia. Those are all possible options to replace Indonesia's kratom supply. And there is hope, even though there's caveats. It's not as good as Indonesia. It's not as good as the supply of Indonesia. It could provide a limited supply that will keep the supply running at least. So at least people that have the money to afford the very expensive kratom will be able to find it. Oh yeah, the other hope is, kratom users could stock up on a lot of kratom before the ban. So if everyone stocks up a lot and then also the vendors stock up 1,000 tons each, the kratom supply could last for months or even years after the ban in Indonesia. So that should keep the kratom supply going for a while, but it's still going to be very expensive at that point. Once the supply is cut off, even if they have a huge stockpile, the vendors will probably be selling it for a lot of money compared to what it is now. The other hope is there's equatorial Africa and also especially the Amazon rainforest. Kratom could easily grow there. There's no hurricanes in equatorial Africa or the Amazon rainforest. Year-round tropical heat and humidity. So they could start kratom farms out there. There's no kratom growing there now, though. Maybe someone has a pet tree somewhere. But anyways, yeah, it would take probably a decade or multiple decades before the kratom supply from the Amazon rainforest or equatorial Africa could replace some of Indonesia's kratom supply. So of course, the biggest hope is that Indonesia will not ban kratom. But honestly, based on all the research I've done, and I've read everything there's possible to read about it. And by the way, for anyone saying this isn't happening, it really is happening. If you find the real info and actually talk to people that know about this from like the AKA and whatever, they could tell you that kratom is going to be banned in Indonesia as of now. There's hope that it will be overturned, but as of now, there's no indication that this ban's going to be reversed. So anyways, once again, there's hope that it could be reversed, though. You know, maybe at the last minute, they'll decide not to ban it, especially because the economy is doing so bad because of the coronavirus. It would be crazy to take away kratom from Indonesia's economy, but it still might happen. All right, so we got the first comment of the show. By the way, if you ask comments or questions, I will answer them live on air. And he's asking, what are the chances it becomes illegal? Well, in Indonesia, which is what we're talking about, I think it's a little more than 50-50. So there's like there's a majority chance it'll become illegal in Indonesia. As far as the United States, that's probably a 50-50. It's pretty unclear right now. So yeah, there's multiple things going on here. Not only is kratom going to become illegal in Indonesia, God forbid, in 2022, but also the United States has been having its own issues with kratom legality. In 2020, and I want to remind people, multiple states tried to ban kratom, like South Dakota, and I think like Oregon, maybe not Oregon, but Maryland for sure, and South Dakota, and I think a couple other states. I don't remember them off the top of my head. They tried to ban kratom this year. It was overturned through vigorous efforts from the American Kratom Association, but the United States has had serious problems with Big Pharma and the FDA and whatever trying to ban kratom. So that's a serious problem, and now we're having a new administration come in on January 20th, only like less than a month from now. That's going to really shake things up here, and it's very likely that kratom bans will come because Big Pharma gave hundreds of millions or billions of dollars to political candidates because basically Big Pharma bought political candidates that will work for them. I've even seen some rumblings from South Dakota. There's like a new candidate that just got elected that's like saying he's going to ban kratom, like that's his number one issue. So yeah, because of the administration being shook up and already even before that, it's like a serious problem in the United States. So, you know, we're going to have to fight every day and stay on top of everything. The kratom community needs to stay alert. You know, kratom could be banned here, God forbid, in the U.S. And then Indonesia, it's looking pretty grim. It looks like majority chance it'll be banned there. There's still hope that it won't be banned there. But once again, like I talked about, kratom could start being grown. You know, they could start exporting from Papua New Guinea or Thailand or Vietnam, Laos, or Cambodia. All those options will take years to fully develop. At first, it'll be a trickle of kratom, but eventually it'll become a lot. It could replace Indonesia's supply maybe after a decade or two of work and growing the forests and getting them up to full steam. So there's some hope, and also Equatorial Africa and the Amazon rainforest, they could also grow it there. So there's hope. And by the way, even in Florida, so I'm in Florida, I even have a kratom tree in my house. And I got that kratom tree from someone that has a kratom forest right here in South Florida. So there are kratom farms here in South Florida, and that could provide a little bit of supply, just a little bit. Orders of magnitude less than Indonesia's supply, but there will be some American-grown kratom as well, and that could really help. You know, at least people will be able to find a little bit of kratom even coming from the U.S. That's definitely not a solution, though. We need it to be exported from like a tropical country like Papua New Guinea or something to replace Indonesia. But yeah, there's hope. You know, I'm not saying kratom is going to cease to exist if it's banned in Indonesia in 2022. It will not cease to exist. In fact, we can even look at it optimistically. You know, maybe we'll find new kratom strains. Maybe the kratom from the other countries will have different alkaloid concentrations. Maybe some will be stronger. In fact, I read a study once that Thailand kratom is a lot stronger than Indonesian kratom. So basically, I'm just trying to put a good tinge on this. You know, at least, and also if Indonesia bans kratom, God forbid if they do, at least it will decentralize the industry. The industry is way too centralized right now. Like, you know, the Indonesian kratom ban is going to like devastate the global kratom supply. Kratom should really be grown in many different countries. It should be grown wherever it is possible to grow it, so not a single country can ruin the kratom supply. And I wish kratom vendors and farmers will take heed of this now before it's too late. Like, even before Indonesia bans kratom, kratom farms should be started in other countries, like Papua New Guinea, Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Equatorial Africa, the Amazon. Kratom farms should be grown everywhere to decentralize the industry. It shouldn't be so centralized like this, where it's, you know, one country bans it like Indonesia, and then the global supply is crippled. So that's something the industry needs anyway. And I believe, you know, as long as kratom's not banned in the United States, there will be kratom supply, even if Indonesia bans it. But it's definitely something to be aware about. Practically, kratom users should keep an eye on this. And maybe now's a good time to stock up on kratom and keep a stockpile going throughout the year. of enough to last them maybe for a year or two. You know, keep enough Kratom to last for a while. If you can afford a lifetime Kratom, maybe just get it. Because we don't know what's going to happen by the end of this year. If it gets to the end of this year and Kratom is still going to be banned in Indonesia, the prices will skyrocket probably starting later in the year, even before 2022 starts. And it could become hundreds of dollars a kilo. It could become thousands of dollars a kilo, which will make it impossible for anyone to stock up, even if they have a lot of money. So, like, you know, this is a good opportunity right now while the kilos are like $75 or whatever. It's a good opportunity to stock up. And, yeah. And then, you know, keeping in mind, maybe you don't have to stock up yet because I don't think the price rise will start till later in the year. I don't think anything would start happening until maybe the autumn. Like if we get to September, October, and it still looks like the ban's coming, I think the prices will start to rise then. So maybe it's not too urgent yet. So something to keep aware of. But practically, it's good for Kratom users to stock up, and also Kratom suppliers should stock up. It is possible they could import enough Kratom from Indonesia to keep the country going here for 10 years. You know, what if they cut down all the Kratom forests all at once if it's going to be banned anyways? Take all the leaves off all the trees, send them to the U.S. That could happen. So, yeah, I mean, there's multiple sorts of hope. There's still hope it will be overturned in Indonesia. There's hope that it could be supplied via stockpiling it or growing it in other countries or even in the U.S. I mean, they could start massive greenhouses here and grow it here also. So, I mean, there's a lot of options if Kratom's banned in Indonesia. But basically, this is what I wanted to talk about today. People should be aware of it, and I will continue to update as more news comes in. Unfortunately, there's been very scant news. There's been almost no news so far about the Indonesian Kratom ban. It's like it comes once every 6 months. There's like an announcement from the BNN saying they're still banning it, and that just happened a couple weeks ago, which is why I'm doing the show now, because it's been confirmed again that it will be banned after a long period where we didn't hear anything. All right, so that's all I have for today. Just to summarize once again, Kratom is going to be banned in Indonesia at the beginning of 2022, just 1 year from now. Kratom users should be very wary of this. They should keep an eye on it and possibly stockpile Kratom now, and especially, you know, before the year ends. If it still looks like it's going to be banned and it's coming towards the end of the year, it's definitely a good time to stock up on Kratom before the prices skyrocket. Because if Indonesia bans Kratom, prices will skyrocket to hundreds or thousands of dollars a kilo, and it might even become almost impossible for a time to find any. But that being said, there is hope. People could stockpile it, suppliers could stockpile it, and these stockpiles could last a while. They could also grow it in Papua New Guinea, Vietnam, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia. So yeah, there is hope. And I don't believe Kratom will go away even if Indonesia bans it. I don't think it will ever go away unless it's banned here, God forbid. Someone's asking a question. By the way, anyone could question or comment, and I will answer you live. Yeah, they're saying, this comment is saying, it would also destroy Indonesia's economy, seeing how that's their biggest export. Well, let me see. Is that their biggest export? It's definitely one of the most important exports. It definitely makes, like, a lot of money for Indonesia. Let me look if that's their biggest export, though. And here's the issue, you know. Even though Kratom seems like such a big deal to us and all the Kratom farmers, it's not the biggest export, probably. It says their most important exports are oil and gas. So they seem to have oil and gas drilling operations there, minerals and crude palm oil and rubber. And also, yeah, by the way, here's an important, interesting thing. So rubber used to be the biggest export of Indonesia, but the rubber prices collapsed because of like synthetic rubber, and also especially because rubber started to be grown in a lot of other countries. So Indonesian farmers were dependent on rubber farming. And then the rubber market collapsed. It still collapsed to this day. And that's why they all started growing Kratom. So, in fact, the rise of Kratom in the United States has a lot to do with Indonesian farmers beginning to grow lots of Kratom because the rubber industry collapsed. And for a lot of people in Indonesia, I say it's true that for multiple provinces in Indonesia, Kratom is their biggest export, and it will destroy their economy. And believe it or not, the government of Indonesia is actually subsidizing Kratom farmers to go to other crops. So the Kratom farmers that are complying with the government in Indonesia, they're actually getting paid money and given resources to go to other crops. And I believe I've heard, and I cannot confirm this, that the United States government's even supplying some of the money to subsidize the Kratom farmers so that they start planting different crops. I can't confirm that, but I've heard that multiple times. Maybe it's just a rumor. But anyways, yeah, but it is true. The government of Indonesia is literally giving money to Kratom farmers so they stop growing Kratom and they grow something else, I guess like rubber. But the problem is there's not much for these farmers to grow. So yeah, maybe Indonesia has oil and gas, and that's their biggest export. But as far as these farmers that grow kratom, I can't really imagine what else they would grow that would be as profitable as kratom or anywhere near that. And by the way, even the kratom growers in Indonesia, they only make a modest income. I mean, they have a good life. Well, I can't say that for everyone. Who knows? Each person's different. But so they make enough to live, and maybe just a little more to be comfortable. It's not like they're rich from this either. But if they were growing something else like rubber or something, they might not have enough money at all to live. So that's the scary thing. It is the biggest export for multiple provinces in Indonesia, and numerous citizens in Indonesia absolutely depend on kratom. And no matter how much subsidization the government gives to farmers to move to other crops, there's no doubt it's going to ruin the lives of many people. The government could say all day, we're giving you multiple years to switch to other crops. We're going to pay you money to help you get you to other crops. But when it comes down to it, the income of the kratom farmers will still be ruined because the other crops are nowhere near as profitable as kratom. But once again, like I mentioned earlier in the show, the COVID pandemic is destroying the global economy. Even though the stock market's looking good and Bitcoin's looking good, it's mostly like an asset bubble caused by trillions of dollars of money printing. And it's not a good time for Indonesia to take away such an important industry. It does feed and provide income for so many Indonesians, and it would be really absurd and asinine for the government to take kratom away from those people, to take their income away. So hopefully they wouldn't do that. And maybe if the global economy really collapses over the next year, which is extremely likely due to the trillions of dollars of money printing and the fact that we're in a big bubble, maybe Indonesia's government will reconsider. If the global economy is completely in a depression, maybe they wouldn't ban kratom. Here's another comment. It's been used for a very long time there. It doesn't really make sense that they would all of a sudden ban kratom. What exactly has sparked this ban? So I mentioned earlier in the show, basically, the BNN, the National Narcotics Agency of Indonesia, they're using the same misinformation from the FDA and Big Pharma. Basically, they say kratom is dangerous and deadly, and it's the same stuff the FDA was spewing. All this misinformation. The BNN, the Narcotic Agency of Indonesia, literally said that kratom is like cocaine and heroin mixed together, and it's so deadly. That's what they said, with no evidence. So that's what sparked the ban. But I guess zooming out, what really sparked the ban? Big Pharma. Big Pharma is trying to get kratom banned in every country possible. And in fact, kratom is banned in many, many countries, unfortunately. In fact, I think over 2 billion people, and I actually did the statistics on this. I actually made a map of the whole world, filled in every country where kratom is banned, and then added up the populations. Over 2 billion people live in places where kratom is banned, which is totally insane. And it's because of Big Pharma. So just like we're in the fight in the U.S. to keep kratom legal, and Big Pharma is the one that's attacking kratom, Big Pharma is doing this in every country, and in many countries they've succeeded. And Big Pharma is particularly attacking Indonesia because they couldn't quite get kratom to be illegal in the U.S. They tried very hard in 2016, and they did not succeed to make kratom illegal. So they figured, hey, we're just going to cut off the supply. So they're attacking Indonesia because that's the supply. So Big Pharma has really focused their efforts on getting kratom banned in Indonesia because that will cause a de facto ban here. It's like pretty much like a proxy ban in the U.S. if you get rid of Indonesian kratom. Because once again, like 100% of the kratom, I don't think there's really any suppliers that get kratom from anywhere else. Like 100% of the kratom is pretty much from Indonesia. So Big Pharma knows that, and they're trying to attack kratom at its source. And what's the cause of that? Well, it threatens their profit margins. Big Pharma is threatened by kratom. And since this is a free, independent site that doesn't sell kratom here, I could say the truth here. The truth is that kratom relieves, if not, cures chronic pain. It doesn't cure, but it relieves chronic pain. It can pretty much cure opioid dependence. Kratom can cure alcoholism. Kratom can literally cure a wide range of psychiatric disorders like anxiety and depression and stress. And Big Pharma is the one that's in that market. Big Pharma is trying to sell painkillers. Big Pharma is trying to sell psych meds. Big Pharma is trying to sell addiction treatment meds. So kratom threatens, Big Pharma's profit margins, basically. And that's why they want kratom to be banned, because kratom is like seriously awesome, and people could use kratom and not need any of the Big Pharma meds. So that's why Big Pharma is attacking kratom, and Big Pharma is the one trying to make kratom banned in Indonesia. That's the root of the problem. And now here's another comment. This is why I'm going to be getting my own kratom tree soon. I would think they would do all right in Central Florida where I live. Well, I could talk a little about that because I'm actually growing some kratom in my own house. So yeah, in Central Florida, you probably want to keep it inside. There are people that grow it in Central Florida outside, but it pretty much gets burned in the winter. If it gets down to 30s or 40s, the kratom gets burned. Like it'll all turn brown, almost die. It might live and come back in the summer, sort of thing. I recommend a greenhouse and a humidifier. And in fact, I'll do a show one day and show you guys my operation here, where it's just it's not really an operation. It's a kratom tree inside a greenhouse with a humidifier, and I water it and give it fertilizer. But yeah, it is good to have your own kratom tree. Everyone should try to do that. Definitely a good thing to have, because even like 1 or 2 leaves is enough to get a good kratom effect, because the fresh leaves are actually much more stronger for some reason than the dried powder that we're used to. Like just 1 or 2 leaves gives me a very strong buzz. So it's something that every kratom user should try to get. They should try to make their own greenhouse. And by the way, it grows a lot better in a greenhouse also because you give it 24-hour sunlight. So that should be a big movement. Hopefully people decide collectively to all grow kratom trees this year. And I actually wish someone would go into the Everglades here and like be like Johnny Kratom Seed, Johnny Appleseed, and just spread kratom through the whole Florida Everglades. That would be amazing. I think that's what we need. We need someone to put it in the entire Everglades and it was just start growing like crazy. It would grow crazy out there, and then we'd have some real kratom forests in the U.S. within a few years. Maybe I'll do it. Anyways, here's another comment. This would definitely be a huge L for the war on drugs. Not all, but a portion of kratom users will turn to deadly street drugs. Well, I think it would cause the war on drugs to go crazy. I think kratom has actually made the war on drugs massively diminished, because now there's a real option that people could take for their pain, their depression, for their addiction. And by the way, the root causes of addiction are pain, loneliness, depression. That's what causes addiction in the first place. And kratom provides a powerful mood lift. It relieves pain mentally and physically. So kratom attacks the root problems that cause drug addiction. And I think if it wasn't for kratom, drug addiction would be totally insane in our country, because there'd be no alternatives besides like heroin, cocaine, stimulants, all this crazy stuff that is super addictive. Kratom gets rid of the root problems of drug addiction, and it's like and 15 million Americans are using it at least. I think it might be a lot more now. And I think the drug overdose death toll would be much higher. The opioid death toll would be much higher than we could possibly imagine if it wasn't for kratom. So the war on drugs, it would be a huge loss in the war on drugs. It would cause the war on drugs to go crazy. Many more people would die, God forbid, if kratom is banned in Indonesia or banned here. Especially, once again, let's say it's banned in Indonesia, but it's not banned here. The price of kratom will be hundreds or thousands of dollars a kilo. At that point, people might start considering, oh, drugs are cheaper. It's cheaper to go to the doctor and get the pills, or it's cheaper to buy street drugs than kratom. It could get to that point with the prices, God forbid. And then people are going to get addicted to stuff. But this person also commented, not all but a portion of kratom users will turn to deadly street drugs. That's true too. I think some people will have the resolve not to go on street drugs. There's also many other plants. We're going to be talking about it on this show. We're going to be talking about dozens of other psychoactive herbs. There is hope. There are other plants. I don't think anyone should turn to street drugs if kratom is banned. Even if it's fully banned here, there's other options and other ways of coping with depression and pain and stuff. But I'm not sure I agree that all but a small portion. I mean, he just said a portion, so that's true. A percentage will turn to street drugs and a percentage won't. I think it's going to cause a massive increase in the death toll alone, massive increase in drug use. A lot of people that have been using like heroin and OxyContin and cocaine, they might just instantly snap back. Maybe not instantly, but as soon as something comes up in their life, like an incident, after kratom is banned and they don't have kratom, if they have any stressful incident, they might just go right back to hard drugs, God forbid. A percentage of people, that's what's going to happen if this happens. Indonesia bans it or the U.S. bans it. So yeah, thank you for that comment. It's very important to talk about the implications of an Indonesian kratom ban. It's really a fight between good and evil here. It's definitely a fight between good and evil, and it's a fight to save lives. Indonesia is saying, the narcotics agency, the BNN, saying, oh, we're trying to ban kratom because it's dangerous and deadly. But the fact is, if they ban kratom, they're going to cause so much death and suffering, which just proves the hypocrisy of the whole situation. They say they're trying to save people by banning it because they say it's dangerous, even though they have no evidence. But if they do ban it, it will cause an untold countless amount of death and suffering in the whole world, because the world will lose most of its kratom supply, causing a rise in drug use, a rise in pain, a rise in depression. The world would be a much worse place without kratom. And I think we underestimate how much better the world is because we do have kratom. As bad as the world is, seemingly, with the coronavirus and all this crazy stuff going on with the government, I think it's a much better place than it would be if kratom didn't exist. Kratom gives people hope. Kratom gives people something they can rely on to help get rid of their depression and pain, which is the most serious problems in our society. There's so much depression and stress and loneliness and pain going on, and kratom alleviates that. So yeah, this is a fight between good and evil. It's a life and death battle. We really need to do everything we can to keep kratom legal in the U.S. and Indonesia. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can really do about Indonesia as far as I know. The American Kratom Association is trying to do something about it, and so far, no success as far as I know. I can't say there's been no success, but there's been no official indications of success. And we can't talk to the Indonesian government ourselves. We're Americans. You kind of have to be an Indonesian to talk to the Indonesian government. And yeah, the kratom farmers in Indonesia are definitely talking to the government there and lobbying as hard as they can to keep kratom legal. But once again, 2 weeks ago, the Indonesian government affirmed, they had a press conference to confirm that kratom is definitely still going to be banned in 1 year from now in Indonesia. So far, years of lobbying. Remember, this started in March 2019. That's when the ban was first announced. It's been almost 2 years since this ban was first announced. And, there's been tons of lobbying for almost 2 years to reverse this kratom ban, and it has not been reversed. And now things are even more sticky because the coronavirus is making it very hard to even interact with the government and try to repeal the ban. So that's the issues here. It's not looking too hopeful. For those who missed earlier in the show, though, I was talking about how there's alternatives. First off, kratom users could stockpile kratom. They could stockpile as much as they can. Kratom suppliers could stockpile a lot of kratom. And also, kratom could start being exported and grown in Papua New Guinea, Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia. And those are all options where I believe kratom is legal. Kratom is definitely legal in Papua New Guinea, and I believe it's legal in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, even though it's a little gray area. So, kratom could be exported from those countries, but it would take time to develop the kratom forest there. And then Thailand's also an option. In fact, the American Kratom Association is trying to, they've said that's our biggest hope is Thailand will legalize it pretty much, as far as I know. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but they've talked about that a lot. But Thailand is, they haven't legalized it yet. And even if they do, they cut down all their kratom forests 80 years ago. There's still some kratom growing there, but it's going to take about a decade to get the kratom forest there up to full steam. So basically, Thailand's an option, but it's not looking so good. Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Papua New Guinea, also Equatorial Africa and the Amazon rainforest have perfect growing conditions. So all those things combined, and also people, like we talked about, people should try to grow their own kratom tree. First off, it's an amazing hobby. It's really fun to look at it while you're taking kratom. There's nothing better than chewing on some kratom leaves and staring at a kratom tree. Well, maybe there's stuff better than that. But anyways, it's nice. And then also, that could be your backup plan, especially if you get serious about it and build a big greenhouse, or you live in a place in South Florida. I mean, you could try in Central Florida, the person that asked that earlier. There's people up there that say it works for them, but, if it goes down to 30, and by the way, I'm a meteorologist. That's what my degree is in. I'm actually a meteorologist, even though I'm a kratom expert, and that's my job now is kratom. But, Central Florida gets a little too cold for kratom to grow outside. I mean, I know there's people trying, but they don't fully understand that, hey, it could get into the 20s in Central Florida, and kratom will absolutely die, even if it's freezing, even for a little while. So, yeah, try to grow it inside. Every kratom user should have a plant inside their house, and that will help alleviate their fears, because at least they can keep growing leaves. And 1 or 2 leaves is all it takes to, get a good kratom buzz. I believe that's all I have today, unless anyone wants to ask some more questions before I go. I really appreciate everyone that questioned and commented. This has been the most active show yet. And I'll be back with another topic. I'm not sure exactly when. I'm thinking about making a schedule so people know when to tune in. But I'm not sure I could stick to a schedule. But I'll be back. There'll be many, many more episodes. There's so much to talk about kratom, so many issues. And also, I'm going to also talk a lot about the benefits of kratom, how it saves lives on the future episodes. And by the way, you could comment, people that are listening, if you want to be on the show and tell your kratom story, I will absolutely put you on the show so you can tell your story. We got a question. What were the other plants that you had mentioned? All right, so yeah, part of the show in the future is going to be talking about other plants. Let me read a list of plants. I've done a lot of research on this. I actually have a list ready to go. I guess this will take a little time. Well, first off, there's Akuama. And by the way, Akuama is available on Amazing Botanicals. That's going to be legal no matter what. And that does have some of the similar alkaloids to kratom. From what I understand, it's a very weak version of kratom, but it does have some opioid properties. So Akuama seeds, those are good. And also there's Metrogena hirsuta, by the way. So there's other basically Metrogena is a genus, a species. And there's other species closely related to Kratom that have some similar alkaloids. Kratom is the king of them all, obviously, but there's also Mitragina hirsuta, Mitragina javenica, Mitragina parvifolia. There's like all these different related species where if Kratom is banned, you could probably still buy those other species, even though supply would be limited. It would be possible. And aside from things that are just directly Kratom alternatives, well, let me get into the other Kratom alternatives. There's another one right here. Just looking at my list of all the plants I know of. I lost it for a second. 1 second, I'm going to find it. There's another plant that no one knows about that's important. All right, here we go. Incarvilia sinensis. So that's the plant. Incarvilia sinensis is actually, apparently they say it has properties almost as powerful as, I guess, morphine. It's not addictive like that as far as I know, but honestly, I haven't done any research on it. But there's other plants completely unrelated to kratom that have opioid effects. And I believe there's even another one called Combretum quadrangulare that also is considered a kratom alternative. So there's multiple other plants in the world that are kratom alternatives that I will talk about in future shows. In fact, each one deserves its own show. And aside from that, there's a lot of other plants that do all sorts of things. Like, there's Kana. It's like a mood lifter. There's, valerian, of course, and Mad Dog Skullcap. And there's also Cat's Claw. Cat's Claw is super interesting. It contains some similar alkaloids to kratom, but also simultaneously has its own very magical alkaloids. I could probably talk about this for a very long time. I literally have a list of like 50, 60, 70 plants here, actually, that I've been researching. And this will be on future shows. But yeah, there's dozens of other botanicals that people could take. And maybe it won't be like a cure-all like kratom is, but there's a botanical for every condition that will still be legal. Even if kratom is banned completely, God forbid, there's still going to be enough plants out there to relieve and cure pretty much any condition. I believe God put a plant on this earth for every problem. That's the fact. In fact, I have a list of like 70 plants. There's thousands of them. I barely scratched the surface. So I don't think we should be so worried. We don't have to panic, at least, if kratom is banned, God forbid. I'm not saying it's being banned yet. I'm not saying that. This whole show is about how in 2022, at the beginning of 2022, 1 year from now, Indonesia is planning on banning it. And even then, I talked about how there's plenty of hope for alternative supplies of kratom from other countries and stuff. But anyways, there's dozens of other plants, so no one needs to panic about it either. There'll still be things that can relieve pain and lift the mood that are still going to be legal. So what we all need to do, and I'll help with that, is educate ourselves about plants. Kratom's not the only plant. There's thousands of other plants that are quite interesting. All right, here's another. Well, someone's just asking a general question about kratom. How long does kratom stay good in a vacuum-sealed bag? Well, if you leave it in the vacuum-sealed bag, I would say it would last like forever. Many, many years. You could probably put it away and give it to your kids as an inheritance. If you vacuum seal it and put it away in a dark place. Now we got a comment, and this happens every time I talk about it, and I will respond to this person. Indonesia's not going to ban it. I hope so. Amen, amen. I hope they don't ban it. But like I talked about in the show, the official indications are that it's going to be banned. They affirmed 2 weeks ago in a press conference that it's going to be banned. That's why the show is happening now, because 2 weeks ago they announced it's still going to be banned. Because there wasn't news about it for a while, and then they came on with a press conference to affirm that it's going to be banned. So, yeah, and by the way, everyone I've talked to at the top of the kratom advocacy circles, or whatever you want to call them, they all confirm it's going to be banned. There's no official indications yet that it's not, that this ban will be overturned. It's possible to be overturned. You might be right. It could get overturned. There's plenty of good reasons why they shouldn't ban it. So there's plenty of hope, and we have a whole year for something good to happen. But yeah, I just want to respond to that comment. It's not fake news here. This is real news. Well, if anyone else has a comment at the last minute, feel free to ask. You could ask about anything about kratom or plants. By the way, I'm going to be coming back, hopefully, practically every day. And maybe I could start setting a time for this so people know when to tune in. But yeah, I'm going to be back with all sorts of shows about all the benefits of kratom, stories about how kratom saved lives. You can message here, leave a comment if you want to be on the show. I will interview people on the show. You can come on there and tell your story. So we're going to start doing that too. And then we'll be talking about dozens of other plants. The show will go on pretty much forever. There's so much to learn about kratom and ethnobotanicals, and that's what the show's all about. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. I really appreciate all the comments. It's fun to do this, and I'll be back soon. Have a good one, everyone.